just a small town girl.
For this video, I'm going to explain the first half of Chapter 5, Polynomials. I'm going to do examples of synthetic division and factoring using greatest common factors, grouping, and how to factor when you have three terms. A polynomial is an expression constructed from variables and constants. To be a polynomial, the expression can only use the operations of addition, subtraction, or multiplication. The expression also can't have negative integer exponents.
I guess he's an Xbox and I'm more Atari.
A monomial is a polynomial that has only one variable.
We're superstars, we are who we are. We're dancing like we're done.
A binomial has two variables and a trinomial has three variables. And by those definitions, you should be able to see the pattern.
I'm looking at an angel, and believe me when I say she got that whole place glowing.
One thing you can do with these expressions is divide. To divide polynomials, you can either just simplify using synthetic division or long division.
So if you're too school for cool.
So now I'm going to show you an example using synthetic division. And my example is 5x cubed minus 13x squared plus 10x minus 8 divided by x minus 2. And this problem will be easy because all my exponents are put in order, and so I won't have to use any placeholders.
I made it. I used to dream about the life I'm living now.
To simplify using synthetic division, the first step you have to do is write the terms of the dividend so that the degrees of the terms are in descending order. Then write just the coefficients. So you bring down the 5, the negative 13, the 10, and the 8. And that's your first step. For the second step, you have to write the constant r of the divisor x minus r. In this case, r equals 2. So then I have to bring down the first coefficient. And in this problem, I will bring down a 5.
Rain is a good thing. Rain makes cold.
For the third step, I have to take the first coefficient, which is 5, times r, which is 2. So when I take 5 times 2, I get 10. And then I have to add the product and the second coefficient together, which is negative 13 plus 10, which equals negative 3.
I'm feeling like a star, you can't stop my shine. I'm flying cloud 9, my head's in the sky. I'm solo, I'm riding solo.
For the fourth step, I pretty much do what I did for the third step. And I take this negative 3 times 2, and I get negative 6. And then I take this 10 plus a negative 6 and get 4.
You make me smile like the sun, fall out of bed, sing like a bird, dizzy in my head.
Then I take 4 times 2 and get 8. So then negative 8 plus 8 is 0. So this problem is nice because I don't have to deal with a remainder.
This is what it is, this is who I am, this is where I finally take my stand.
So for the final step, I have to take the numbers along this bottom row, which are the coefficients of the quotient. Then I have to start with the power that is 1 less than the degree of the dividend. So I get 5x squared, and the squared is because it is 1 less than what I started with, and then the rest is negative 3x plus 4. And this is my answer to my synthetic division problem.
I catch a grenade for ya, throw my hand on a blade for ya.
Now I'm going to show an example problem of how to factor polynomials. And the example I'm going to use is 6x squared y squared minus 2xy squared plus 6x cubed y. And the easiest thing for me to do first is to look for a common factor. And so I factor out each part separately. So the first part will be 2 times 3 times x times y times y. And so that's how I factor out the first part. And then I move to the second part, which I have a negative 2 times x times y times y. And then I have a 2 times 3 times x times times y. And that is how I factor out the greatest common factor of this equation. So then I just bring down the 2x, y, and then I just put the rest of what I couldn't factor out in parentheses. So I have 3x, y, minus y, plus 3x squared. And if I want to check my result, I just take what I got here and multiply it together, and I should come back to my original equation.
I don't want to walk this earth if I gotta do it solo.
Another way I can factor is by grouping. For my grouping example, I'm going to use a cubed minus 4a squared plus 3a minus 12.
I just haven't met you yet.
For the first step, I can group this equation into two binomials. To do that, I just put parentheses around the first two coefficients and the last two.
I wanna go there where you go. I wanna find out what you know.
Then I can find the greatest common factor in each binomial. So in the first part of the binomial, I can factor out an a squared and not an a or a negative 4. And then in the second binomial, I can factor out a 3 and not the a or the negative 4. And then for my answer, I get a minus 4 times a squared plus 3.
There's a wild, wild whisper blowing in the wind.
Now I will show you an example of factoring using three terms. And to find the coefficients of the x terms, I have to find two numbers that multiply to get 30 because 5 times 6 is 30, and then they have to add to get negative 13. And those numbers would end up being negative 10 and negative 3 because they multiply to get 30 and add to get negative 13. Then I have to rewrite this expression using the negative 10x and negative 3x in place of the negative 13x, and then factor by grouping. So my new equation will be 5x squared minus 10x minus 3x plus 6. And then I have to group these into binomials so I can factor them.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough.
And then when I factor this equation by grouping, for the first part of the binomial, I can factor out a 5x and not an x or a negative 2. And then for the second part of this binomial, I can factor out a negative 3 and not an x or a negative 2.
Don't stop, make it pop, DJ blow my speakers up tonight.
Then all I have to do is the distributive property, and I get 5x minus 3 and x minus 2. Thank you for watching my Algebra 2 video on polynomials. Now you can watch my second video if you want to learn about the second half of Chapter 5.